Hey everybody, it's Brandon. Welcome back to Connect Your Dots. I'm so excited that you're here with us today. I have my new friend, Casey McEwen, with me, and he is the author of this awesome book. I'm going to show you guys right here, and I am also going to put the links to it and everything else, but it is called Being Present. And here's what I love is Casey, when I asked him how he want me to introduce you, he said, well, I am a fantastic husband. I'm a fantastic dad. I'm a fantastic grandfather. He is a CEO of 10 companies, and he and I have the same mission, which is to build companies in order to grow people. Casey, welcome to Connect Your Dots.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you to share your wisdom and all these wonderful things. And, I didn't tell you about this, but here's my first question that I throw at people is, what's your favorite song that would be your walk-on song? If you were speaking on stage and they were introducing you and you got to choose the song, what would that song be and why?
That is a fantastic question. I'll tell you that I've gone on many times to that old song, Money, Money, Money. But then I rarely talk about money. I talk about other things that are benefits, and sometimes you'll make some money, sometimes you won't make some money, but that's a lot of what I've said in the past and done. Yeah. So I kind of like it. I don't mind it at all. And it's kind of fun and upbeat,
Yeah. Well, Casey, I want to talk about being present. The subtitle on it is A Guide to Connecting. Why this book?
I tell you, for me, like many times in my life, it was that sharp stick in the eye that, gave you that blinding flash of the obvious that there is a serious issue that's out there and people are dying. People are not maximizing relationships. And there's so much to gain and so much to lose if you're not being present. And I searched around to try and find, I wanted somebody more credible than me, a better writer than me, someone who's more influential than me, somebody speaks better than me, to put something like that together. And I even approached a couple people. Nobody was interested. And I said, well, doggone it, I'm the guy, I guess. So, so I wanted to put that together. It really is intended to help people truly connect better than they ever have before, and because they value it. So again, to your point, and I love a lot of these in your book. We're asking why, and so what's the value in being present? What's the harm if you're not present? And I've got lots of examples in the book, but I think it's critical if you value the relationships that you have, no matter who it's with. But you'll connecting the dots. Talk about that. It is in your personal life. It is in your business. It is. Depending on your religious beliefs. I'm a Christian. So, I think that in terms of God, I think of it in terms of my family, friend relationships, where I look at all those and say, guess what? I have failed so many times. It's unbelievable. And just a couple of these concepts have made a huge difference in my life. And I wanted to share those.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And you have at the beginning of why this book and your story, were there some stories, some situations in your life that prompted this? I know you said you're looking around and see people, what they're struggling with. Tell us on the personal level about the book.
Sure. And for me, this is one of the examples I use in the book, but I was at one of those family barbecues in the neighborhood like we've all been. And, you've got the guys group who kind of gravitate together. And it was a bad situation. Had a guy who was one of our normal guys, lost his job. So he's, again, there trying to take care of a family and everything else, and was really concerned. Now, it didn't seem like anybody else really cared. And somehow I got into a conversation with him and realized this guy really, truly needed someone to listen to him, someone to pay attention, someone to be present just to hear it. He was so distraught and kind of on the edge. I ended up being kind of worried about it. But my biggest reflection was that, man, that could have been me sitting there needing some help, or any of the other guys that, were around that circle at that time. And what would we have had? We would have had the balance of the population partially engaged, not really listening, not really paying attention. checking their phones, chatting about a side conversation, having another cocktail, doing everything other than engaging. And I know that's not what necessarily picnics are about, but if you have somebody in need, I realized, listen, that's been me. I have failed just like all these other guys around me with friends, and here are all the different ways that I did. And I started mentally kind of go through those. And then I started noticing those patterns in my friends. I started noticing that it was happening in my family. And guess what? The biggest guilty guy, that was me. Not that all our kids don't wrap themselves up on their phones, but it was truly me. It was super uncomfortable to realize I was the largest part of the problem. Wow. And that really stuck with me. And then I started explaining that to people. And the next thing I know, people are sharing stories back with me of, oh, gosh, you're right. Oh, here's another example of that. And sometimes they were sharing stories that were tragic, people who die. And then I think back in my history to a time when I worked for a company, and this is a horrible story, but I'll tell it anyway, because I think it's a strong story. Working with a fantastic guy with a fantastic company, young 30s, very aggressive, wife and 2 kids. And his wife kisses him goodbye mid-morning because he was working at home that weekend day, and leaves, comes back 3 hours later and finds their 2-year-old, unfortunately, dead in the hot tub. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not sometimes a great story to tell, but I try to start there because most of the other things aren't quite that life-threatening. Although we've all heard stories, and the statistics even show now that, there's more deaths from driving distracted than there has ever been with driving drunk. Not to lessen that, but just to put it on, give it some scale. And so I continued to hear these stories, and I was like, okay, well, that's kind of cute. And then eventually I started writing them down and continued to share them, and to a point where you have a heightened sense of awareness. And now as you're looking around, and I'm seeing myself failing with my relationships on every possible level. I don't think anybody could do it worse than me. But then realizing that, and then trying to startly change, behaviors to have that not be the case. And it was uncomfortable. I mean, once you understand what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish, then it's a little bit easier. But even then, I was in the throes of it. I was in the struggle trying to figure out, what do I do and how do I change? Yeah. And so eventually I got there, and there was enough of it that I thought, well, I need to put this down on paper, and I want to share these stories because everyone I talk to says that it's impactful. So that's that was my reason for actually going all the way and putting it together.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's a being present, like you talk about texting and driving, but then you mentioned like being emotionally present for people. Talk to me, like how do people that are listening to this going, yes, I'm guilty of that. It sounds like you had a lot of people say that when you were gathering research. Yes, I'm guilty of that. Like, how do we be present better?
Thank you. That's such an important question. So in the book, and it's everything from, I use affirmations, iconography, cute little acronyms as little mental jolts, but it all comes down to everything else we've done in our life is just a habit, and it's a new habit. So being able to sit down in front of somebody, knowing that they want to meet me to have a cup of coffee, and I haven't talked to them in 2 months, they've got something on their mind. I don't know if they're looking for an opinion from me. I don't know if they just want to be heard. I don't know if they just want to get out and have a cup of coffee. So part of what we have to do differently is assess that kind of situation. We have to make sure that from a physical perspective, they could not argue that we are engaged with them. I'm not sitting there in front of them looking at who else is coming through the door. I think that's just so disrespectful. But I didn't think that, years ago. I mean, I was the guy who did that all the time. So in order to engage with them the right way, there was a lot of physical cues. If you're prepared on the front side to have a better conversation and understand kind of why you're there and probe to understand why it is they wanted to interact with you in the first place, it's going to be a better interaction. Exponentially, it gets much better from there if you have a roadmap. And that's part of what I kind of have in the book, kind of talking you through, here are the things to focus on.
Yeah. You want to please touch on those as part of your roadmap. Like, what are the high level steps that people should be thinking about? So
the acronym I put together was, and this is just a simple one for present. So P is the prepare yourself. And I go into detail about how you should actually do that physically and mentally to do that. And then remove the distractions, which is, I think, that's so critical almost in any environment. So if I'm at work and I want to make sure that something happens with somebody else the right way, part of my role is to remove the distractions because I want to make sure they receive the information the right way. Same thing at home. Man, talk about mistakes. Music running on Pandora, TV's on, blah, 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 blah. Instead of, hey, let's sit down and have a serious conversation about these things. So I think it's critical. Engage your focus is the E. And that really, in addition to removing the distractions, it really is intended to try and find out from the other person, what is it that they're looking for from me? If they hold me in high enough regard to say, I want to spend time with you, I don't know why, but it's my job to figure out why. And that can help me and anybody else who does this really have a deeper relationship with whoever it is we're interacting with. And I love that part. The S is the see the need, and that's the back half of that. Understand why. And then in some cases, make sure that you're validating what that is. Because so many of us say one thing and either don't get a chance to say the other thing, or we say the wrong thing for what we actually mean.
Right.
So it can get us down on a tangent sometimes of going down the wrong trail. Enjoy the time. And that is just absolutely sincere. You've got a great quote in your book. I think it was a Dale Carnegie quote. But it really is about, if I'm going to engage with somebody, I really have to sincerely want to enjoy that time. And so some of these principles don't work if you really don't care. And there's people who really don't care.
That's true.
So, if you self-identify as somebody who says you do, I say, hey, try this kind of a thing on for size. See if it fits. See if you like it. See if you're having any success with it.
Right.
Do any of it, you'll be better than you were the day before. Nurture the relationship is for the N. And I think that the frequency with which we interact with almost anybody, work people, family, distant relatives, close relatives, you name it, I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. Some relationships, I'm fine with those being casual. I don't necessarily need to get any deeper, with my Orkin control guy. At the same time, he's a fantastic guy. And now that I know him, it's like, oh, it's wonderful. And then the last thing is to thank them, because I think most people don't expect to be thanked at the end of a conversation. They don't expect to say, hey, Brandon, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. Or sometimes what they'll do is they'll come back to you a month later and go, when we talked about this and you were open and you shared that story, I didn't tell you at the time, but man, it really made a difference because here's how I used that information. And sometimes it'll be for them. Sometimes you're the conduit to somebody more important in a greater need than the person you sat down with. So you might have inadvertently had a fantastic effect on the neighbor of a neighbor and never even known it. So thanking them, I think, is critical to say, thank you for spending this time with me.
That's
really that's just one of the few little tools. It's just a little pocket card and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and that's I like to call those our back pocket tools, right? Something you can pull out of your back pocket and take a look at or memorize to lead us with and I love that you call it a habit. And you know me, I'm a big habit guy as well.
Yep.
And it's the habit of showing up into a conversation with a strategy or with an intent so that we can be the best version of ourselves and give of ourselves wholeheartedly.
I love the way you say that. That's another big part of this is I want to be the best that I can be because I value these relationships. Yeah. And from a guy who's, that's not been necessarily, a strength all my life, it's been great to move into this direction.
Yeah. That's really cool. So let me ask you about on the family side. One is, what do you do when like a child or maybe in some people's case a spouse doesn't really want to engage with them because they've blown it so much? Like how do we engage that and rebuild that relationship?
I think it goes back to the why. And so I use the example in the book sometimes of if you want to change, well, first of all, understand you're responsible for the culture in your own home. And once you actually realize that and acknowledge it, then it really makes you uncomfortable. So,
yeah. You know what? That was actually one of my questions. So I want to go into that right now. I know I just kind of derailed where you were going, but since you brought it up, I mean, talk about that, because as you know, with Connect Your Dots, my focus is you got to first start with you, and then it's your family, and then it's your business or your career. And if all three of those aren't moving in the right direction and cohesively, then you got a problem. It's like driving a car with a flat tire, right? Something's going to, cause major damage if you don't pull over and fix it. And so talk to me about that whole, your whole chapter where you talk about being responsible for that.
Yeah, I tell you, it was really illuminating to me. And again, it was just one of those times where I realized, wow, this isn't good. How can I make this different or better? And the concept behind being present does connect the dots between all three of those. But in the home, especially, once you go, okay, I've got some scars here. We've not put the right culture in place in our house and I'll go through some examples, but everything from how we treat each other. Are we on time? Do we have meals and conversations together that are undistracted? And I can tell you, I'll start with those three and tell you, I was over 3. And there's a whole lot more, but I realized that it was broken. And I think part of what most folks would agree, they're responsible for the culture in their own home, but they don't even think about it. It's not even on their radar screen. I mean, they're not thinking that there is value in doing that. And the other thing is, there's not really a roadmap, or not a roadmap that works in an age of technology in situations like we are today. So getting buy-in from the most important person, your spouse, agreeing on how you're going to activate and manage that, because all the other conversations are going to be difficult. But if you get that person on your side and say, hey, here's how we're going to handle these things. Do we agree to do this? And start to put it in place before you tell any kids, that's ideal. And then work it in with, the other people who were in the home. Yeah. And what I've experienced, and then certainly what I've heard, there's so many more or better success stories than mine. There are people whose family lives have absolutely, completely changed. Pre-teenagers and teenagers, especially in that range, where it's such a critical time in their personal development. Yeah. Trying to make good decisions and helping them understand, here's how you use the right type of judgment and those kinds of things. Having those conversations, there's no other forum, there's no other time or place where that's going to occur. And understanding that you have to make that happen. And then if you don't, and you look around and you don't like where you are, well, guess what, pal? It's me. I'm the one. I'm the problem. That has been my case. There's been so many awesome stories.
What if you had to choose like the top 2, maybe 3 family habits that you've established with your family that have been the most beneficial, what would those be?
Well, 2 of these are super easy. The first one is everyone together at the same time for meals. It's not easy, and it can't necessarily be a hard and fast rule because our lives don't necessarily work that way. Yeah. But having a time, even though it may be sometimes a little later than all of us may like, to have that time together is one thing. And the second, and I think it's probably the more important thing, is just the removal of the distractions. All of us, I think, have been so guilty of at different times, if you're a business leader like, that you've been and successful, you may be sitting at that dinner table with your iPad up and talking to people and, kind of fake engaging and, all that kind of stuff while you're still on your phone and your iPad is there and everything else. So removing all those distractions and then having a little bit of a cheat sheet would be the third one, I would say, of the stuff that if you and your spouse say, here's the stuff we kind of like to seed a little bit deeper in terms of here's a moral lesson or a concept or watch out for or whatever those things are, having that short little cheat sheet that the kids don't see is absolutely amazing, because you get to that quiet time. I try to let them fill it because we have a natural tendency to be a space filler, I think, in conversations. Or if you talk as much as I do, then I am, I know. But having them bring something up is awesome. And when they start to do that as a result of having those times together, that safe place of talking about, my great example friend of mine whose 14-year-old daughter is sharing stories of her friends and some of the bad things that they're doing. And thank goodness this family handled it what I believe is the right way. And so they just engaged her about all the different subjects. How do you feel about this? And they weren't even judgmental at all. How do you feel about this? Well, if you do that, what do you think is going to happen?
Coaching their kids instead of parenting them.
Yeah. Instead of,
Yeah.
So I think those are probably the three big things in terms of the home.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I'll tell you, I feel compelled to say this. A couple of things that we've done that I'm very proud of, and I think as people are listening, some of the things like we have, I would say, like you in your intro, I'm a fantastic husband. I am a fantastic dad. I am not a grandfather yet, but I am going to be a really, really good one of those too. But we make evening meals a priority, and we're not perfect at it. But that's been my wife's desire has always been we eat meals together, and as my wife says, we're not a family that eats with the TV on.
Right.
We're not a family that eats with the TV on. And then as cell phones and everything came into play, we don't have cell phones at the table. And then one of the things that we've done over these years that I think has been one of the greatest gifts to our family is we have the question of the night.
Oh.
And it could be most of the time, to be honest, it's just something fun. But what it does is it gives us a topic to engage around. And it also helps us to start to see the heart of each one of our children, like based on their answers. So example, a question might be, hey, if you could be anywhere in the world tonight having dinner, where would that be and why?
Great question.
Or if you could be, kind of the typical ones, right? If you could be having dinner tonight with three people, who would they be? People that have died, people who are present, people, all these things, people that are famous. And then other things like, simple stuff like if you could be any type of animal, what would it be and why? Just they're stupid in a way, but they're so, so powerful because when you're really listening, not only are you hearing their answers and they're engaging and listening to each other, but you're also learning their heart. You're learning what they care about. And then the really fun part is when they start talking about those things in different situations where they'll go something like, oh yeah. And Abby, you were talking about Hawaii as your happy place and and you just look at that and go, they've gotten to know each other and gotten to know each other's hearts. And then the last thing I'll say is we talk about with our kids about their heartstrings being connected. Your family, you have heartstrings that are connected. And the only way those heartstrings are going to be disconnected is if one of you cuts them. So you guys got to be very aware about keeping those heartstrings connected. You're going to fight. You're going to disagree. You're going to have different personalities and all that. But those heartstrings are connected until one of you cuts them. And that would break our heart. Oh. No pressure, but that would break our heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. And in fact, I'm going to steal it. Sorry.
Please do.
All right, pal. I'm stealing that. I'm going to use that as one of the examples.
Awesome. You steal away. It's all this stuff is made to make families and people better. So, the question I was moving into is about how you bring this up in your family. And you did talk about the responsibility of culture in our home. I want to end our time with talking about just present versus distracted and what does that really mean for us? We've talked a lot about the outcome, but what does that really mean, present versus distracted?
I think, in the way that I say it is, it's so that you can be the best version of you, that you can be, which I say in the book. And I think for me and for other people who this message resonates with, and sometimes not the first time, the second or the third time, then something has happened that they've seen that value in that. So if they get and understand the why, understand the dangers around it not happening the right way, you're more plugged in and more apt to adopt that posture, which I think if you do at a small amount or a higher amount, you're going to be better for the experience. But if you have a passion for it, if it really does resonate with you, whether it's the message or just the fact that you failed, I failed. So therefore I know I need to do something that's different. for me, and I think for a lot of others, it's not the fear of failure. I've already failed. I want to do the best. I want to be the best in all those different relationships. I want to be a better leader. I want to be a better husband, a better father. That's the drive, I think.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think if I could throw this on top of that as an answer too, is I think it's being aware of our actions and what our actions speak. Because and one of the quotes I had in my book as well is that. And I know a lot of people said, I always attach it to a Zig Ziglar, but I think there was lots of other people that have said similar versions. But it's people don't remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel. And I remember being in my office one time when my wife had called me and I was doing some other things and I was distracted and I didn't take her call. And it dawned on me that if I tell my wife and my kids that they're more important to me than work, but when I'm at work, I don't take their calls, how am I really making them feel? And that became a tool. That became a strategy and a system. My strategy, I want my wife and kids to know that they're more important to me than anything else. My system, when they call, I answer.
Right.
And I've stepped out of some big meetings and I've just said, hey, here's my rule. I'm sorry if this offends you, but this is my youngest giving me a call and I'm going to take 2 minutes to answer it. And it's because in the big picture, I care more about how my family feels than what other people may feel about me.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that posture and I love the story. I think it's smart.
Yeah. Well, Casey, I'm so grateful that you joined us today. Would you tell anybody or everybody listening that if they want to connect with you, how's the best way for them to connect with you?
Sure. There's a website. It's CaseyMcEwen.com. Picture of a fantastic looking guy in there on the front. And that's one way.
There you go.
CaseyMcEwen@me.com, because, yes, I'm an Apple fan, is an email way. And those two ways are the best.
You got it. Well, before we go, I want to tell you, I love your shirt. I think it's awesome. I mean, I don't know if I could pull off a shirt like that. So you look awesome with it. I'm assuming that shirt with maybe a little fedora and a cigar on the beach would be a really good day for you. And I do look forward to sharing a cigar with you someday soon.
Absolutely. And I won't argue with that. It looks like an aquarium threw up on me, but that's not the case.
I think it looks sharp and you carry it and you pull it off well. So Casey, thank you so much. And hey, everybody, hope you enjoyed this time with Connect Your Dots. Wasn't that a great conversation with my friend Casey McEwen? This is my, I'm recording this after we talked, and I've been thinking about it. And you know what? Really want to make sure that you all take away that being present. It's not just about other people. It's about ourselves. It's about how we show up and what we communicate. There's so many, things that you hear me say over and over with Connect Your Dots. It's one of them is that people don't remember necessarily what you said, but they remember how you made them feel. And being present is one of those things that helps people feel important, to feel valuable. I mean, look at it this way. If you're sitting having coffee with somebody and they keep checking their phone, what does that communicate to you? It communicates that whatever's pressing on their phone is more important to them than their time with you, that whatever's on their phone can't wait. And therefore it's more important than you are. And that's a crappy feeling for anybody. So I hope that you got a lot of benefit out of this today. Take a look in the show notes. I'll put down there links to his book, Being Present, on Amazon. If you can't find him there, you can always search for it. It's called Being Present. It is Casey McEwen, and his last name is McEwen. And hey, everybody, I hope that you enjoyed this episode as always. And I want to invite you also to take a look at, please subscribe if you would be so kind, if you're finding value in this, to screen capture this on your phone and share it on Instagram. Tag me so that tag us at Connect Your Dots Show so we know that we could go back and thank you and give you a big shout out for that. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Happy 2021. And we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Blessings, everybody.